the Tribal-class destroyers. Larger and more heavily armed than any destroyers before, they were built not just to escort the fleet, but to fight. Their sleek hulls carried 8 4.7-inch guns, mounted in 4 twin turrets, giving them firepower close to that of a small cruiser. They displaced around 1,850 tons, and could reach speeds over 36 knots. They carried the names of proud and fierce peoples, Maori, Mohawk, Zulu, Sikh, and others. Among them was HMS Cossack, named for the bold horseman of the Russian steppes. She was laid down at Vickers Armstrong's shipyard in Newcastle in June 1936 and launched in June 1937. Commissioned into the Royal Navy the following year, she was everything her name suggested: fast, fearless, and full of fight. Cossack joined the 2nd Tribal Destroyer Flotilla, part of the Home Fleet at Scapa Flow. When war erupted in September 1939, she was ready, a steel predator designed for the dangerous northern seas. The first months of the Second World War were strange ones, the so-called phony war. While armies stared at each other across Europe, the war at sea was already real. German raiders hunted merchant ships, and one of them, the pocket battleship Admiral Graf Spee, had captured hundreds of Allied sailors before being cornered and scuttled off Uruguay in December 1939. But the Graf Spee's supply ship, the Altmark, escaped. She carried 299 British prisoners, locked deep within her cargo holds, as she slipped through icy Norwegian waters, trying to reach Germany. Britain could not let her succeed. In February 1940, the Royal Navy learned of Altmark's passage down the Norwegian coast. Norway was still neutral, so the Germans hoped the fjords would shield them. But the Royal Navy dispatched a hunting group under Captain Philip Vian aboard HMS Cossack. What followed would become one of the most daring and symbolic actions of the Tribal-class destroyers. On the night of February 16, in the dark confines of Jossingfjord, HMS Cossack caught up with the Altmark. The German tanker tried to ram Cossack, but she struck back hard, driving the tanker against the rocks. British sailors leapt aboard with their pistols and cutlasses, a scene straight from the Age of Sail. As the boarding party fought through the narrow passageways, they heard voices below deck. A cry called from below, muffled but unmistakable. "We're all British down here." Then moments later, the hatches were opened, and nearly 300 British seamen saw daylight for the first time in weeks. The rescue was complete. When the news reached London, Britain erupted in joy. Cossack's crew became heroes, and Captain Vian received the Distinguished Service Order. The phrase, "The Navy's here," that was shouted by the rescuers, became an instant legend. The Altmark Incident, though small in scale, carried immense symbolic weight. It restored British pride during a grim winter, and showed that the Royal Navy could still strike decisively. This, along with the loss of the Graf Spee, enraged Hitler, an act that would deepen the rift with neutral Norway, paving the way for the German invasion 2 months later. The North Sea now erupted into chaos. And once again, HMS Cossack and her sisters were sent north, into the heart of the fight. Cossack would play a key role in the Second Battle of Narvik, fought on April 13, 1940. She supported the battleship HMS Warspite and 9 other destroyers as they surged into the fjord, engaging the remaining German destroyers trapped in the narrow waters. The roar of naval guns echoed off the snow-capped mountains, smoke and fire reflecting in the icy waters. Every turn and maneuver tested the skill and courage of the crews. The fighting was fierce and chaotic. Within hours, 10 German destroyers and numerous supply ships lay wrecked, their crews forced to abandon ship. The Royal Navy had cleared the fjord of enemy vessels, achieving a decisive naval victory, though the port of Narvik itself remained under German control. The cost was heavy, several tribals were damaged, and lives were lost in the brutal close-range combat of the fjord. Captain Warburton Lee's bold leadership had become legendary. Though tactically costly, his daring attack had dealt a psychological blow to the Germans and demonstrated the indomitable fighting spirit of the Royal Navy. For his courage and command, he was posthumously awarded the Victoria Cross, the first naval VC of the Second World War. HMS Cossack had proven her worth. She had fought in tight waters, under withering fire, and had helped deliver one of Britain's first significant naval victories of the war. The operation at Narvik would be remembered as a testament to the skill, determination, and audacity of her crew. After the Norwegian campaign, Cossack returned to the long, grinding struggle of the Atlantic convoys. The sea lanes were lifelines, carrying food, fuel, and men across U-boat-infested waters. Destroyers like Cossack were the shields that kept those routes open. From her base at Scapa Flow, she escorted convoys across the North Atlantic and Arctic routes, often in brutal conditions. Waves taller than houses, freezing spray, and the constant threat of torpedoes were part of daily life. Cossack's speed and heavy guns made her a formidable escort, especially when hunting surface raiders. By autumn, she was operating in the Gibraltar-based Force H, supporting convoys to Malta and carrying out operations against Axis supply lines in the Mediterranean. In October 1941, while escorting convoy HG-75 from Gibraltar to Britain, tragedy struck. On the night of October 23, in heavy seas west of Gibraltar, U-563, a German submarine, fired a spread of torpedoes. One struck Cossack on her port side near the bridge. The explosion tore through the hull, flooding compartments and killing many instantly. The destroyer was mortally wounded but did not sink immediately. Other ships rushed to her aid, and in the darkness, survivors were pulled from the oil-covered water. Against all odds, a skeleton crew remained aboard, trying to save her. They managed to keep her afloat for 2 days as tugs attempted to tow her toward Gibraltar. But the sea was merciless. On October 27, HMS Cossack finally capsized and sank. 159 men lost their lives. Her end was quiet, far from the glory of her earlier triumphs. Yet her name had already earned a place in naval history, not for her death, but for the lives she had saved and the spirit she embodied. The other tribal-class destroyers continued to fight across every theater of war, from the Arctic to the Pacific, proving themselves among the finest and most versatile ships of their age. Cossack's most famous moment, the rescue aboard the Altmark, remained one of the defining episodes of the early war. It was more than a naval skirmish, it was a statement of defiance, a promise that Britain's sailors would fight wherever their countrymen were held. Her captain, Philip Vian, went on to serve with distinction throughout the war, commanding carriers and later achieving the rank of admiral. His leadership aboard Cossack became a model of initiative and courage under uncertain orders. In the years that followed, new destroyers would carry the same name, each inheriting the proud spirit of the 1938 original. But for those who had served aboard, HMS Cossack would always remain the Cossack, the ship that freed the imprisoned, fought in the ice at Narvik, helped hunt the Bismarck, and faced the Atlantic Sea, right until the end. In every war, there are ships that define an era. HMS Cossack was one of them. She represented the turning point between the traditions of old sea warfare and the hard realities of modern naval combat. Her crew carried pistols and cutlasses one night, and the next, radar and depth charges, a living bridge between the age of sail and the age of machines. Her story is that of courage and duty, of men who knew that the sea could take everything, and yet went anyway. She may have vanished beneath the waves in 1941, but her name, and the cry that echoed through that dark Norwegian fjord, "The Navy's here," live on as one of the Royal Navy's proudest moments. From the gun decks to the bridge, every story we tell honors those who served. If this tale made you feel the salt and steel of history, give it a like, and if you're not yet part of our channel's convoy, subscribe and join the ranks. More powerful stories await.